Hello, my name's Forrest, and I'm tired, but I'm going to try my best to make a video explaining the importance of magnification on any rifle, really, anything outside of home defense at all. If your home defense gun should serve the purpose of being a home defense gun, and that's about it, because I mean, if you only have one gun, you only have one gun. But if you have multiple guns, your home defense gun should be isolated from your other guns on the off chance that you have to use it and it does get taken by police. So that will be the exception here. All other rifles, hunting, general purpose, anything, you need to be prioritizing magnification, and this video is going to show you why. Okay, so here we have a Gatorade can that's meant to represent the size of a human head at about 57 feet. Now, when we look through just some basic iron sights, and please excuse the mess in my backyard, this is my dad's property, you can see that the target is identifiable, or is spottable, but is maybe not super identifiable, not easy to make out, not easy to identify features of it, and if it was not bright orange, you might have great difficulty with it. Now, here we have a pistol red dot. On camera, it appeared as though the dot didn't really cover up the target at all. It seemed much smaller than, but I think that's a combination of the way the camera works on an iPhone and the fact that the dot is a 3 MOA dot, I believe, and how close I was to the red dot. In real life, it almost wholly covered up the target. Now here we have a knockoff Spectre L-can that I got from Temu, basically. It's a clone. And this is where the conversation about field of view starts to really play into effect. On 1X, I actually found that it was a little bit easier to make out certain aspects of the target, at least with the human eye. On camera, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to pick up on that. But field of view starts to play a huge role on things like 1X, which is not no magnification. 1X is not zero magnification. It is simply ×1 magnification, right? It's a subtle difference, but anybody who's looked through an optic can tell you, and yeah. Now here I'm using the 4X part of the optic. It's a dual prism optic, just like the real L-can. And so it zooms in from either 1 or straight to 4X. There's no in between. And on 4X, I can make out all these little identifying features on the can. I can tell that there is indeed writing on the can. I can't tell what the writing says, and I may not be able to make out what individual letters say. If I had the can turned around, I'm sure I could make out the letter G on the front. But maybe even I could make out what flavor the can was if I saw whatever color was there. That might be a little bit harder considering the flavor was green, and this target was at times kind of covered. Grass stood in the way, so something to make it account. A 4X gives you the ability to properly identify at these distances with smaller targets. Now, this might only be the size of a human head, but that's at 4 times magnification. You start looking at instead of 56 feet, you look at 56 meters 3 times away, or maybe 4 times away. Now the human body looks this big. Now I have to identify features on the human body. Is it carrying a gun? Is it a threat to me? Is it facing me? Is it facing away? Things like this start to play an effect. And you need to be able to do that at distances past 200 yards and past if you want to avoid any trouble, right? Inside of 200 yards, you're kind of already facing it. Now here we've got something a little bit different. This is an LPVO. Everybody has one. It's on 1X. It's a Civ Life 1-6, very cheap budget optic. And you'll see that on 1X you get less field of view of the target, right? That's one of the trade-offs from that you make with going with one of these, more general purpose optics. You trade away that field of view. Now on 1X, you're still probably getting plenty of field of view, but you'll see later on, when I compare the 4X to the 4X of the L-can, a much wider field of view with the L-can clone, right? Now here I have it on 2X magnification. I know people that leave their LPVO on this as a sort of jump in between a proper magnification and no magnification, because they find that they can, and I certainly on medium power variable optics, their low end is 2x, sometimes higher, and people can still do that kind of both eyes open shooting. That's definitely still doable with 2x here. As you can see, it's not that much more zoomed in, but when we start comparing this to, irons or a true red dot, you do see downsides, but you should definitely, but the upsides are kind of huge. You start to see that you can still fight with it, right, with both eyes open, but you can start to make out features on the target. All right, now I know I said I'd be comparing 4x to 4x. I believe this was taken on 3x. I could be wrong. It might be 4. I think it was like 3.5 actually. But you can see there's a difference in field of view on target. There's less field of view on this 3 or 3.5 than there was on the 4x of the Elcan, right? That's the pure difference between a prism optic and not. But at this 3x to 4x magnification area, you start to get a general ability to identify details on a small target at some distances, right? This is just 57 feet. Can you imagine 200 feet, right? The main goal would be to just be able to see if they have a gun, what kind of gun, hopefully, and maybe identify, if you're in more of an offensive role, maybe identify the target itself. That's when other magnification levels might be needed. But for a defensive situation, you're just trying to see if the target is armed or not, right? Well, with 3 to 4x, you begin to gain that ability. And here, the most magnification I had available was the 6x feature on the Civ Life LPVO. You can see at 6x, field of view is very restricted, but the magnification level is strong. The target appears larger in the optic. When you start looking at things like an LPVO, if it's a second focal plane, your reticle should actually be zeroed at this magnification, and the BDA reticle, or whatever you want to call it, it's not a BDA in this case. If it's not calibrated to the ammunition or the barrel length, it's typically, more generally, the shooter, takes that in mind. It really only relevant or in respect to itself at this magnification, right? At this magnification, I find magnifications as high as 6 and up after that are more useful in an offensive role, so that you can identify targets' facial features at distances, at that 200-yard range and past, right? And you certainly would want to go a lot more than that, maybe 8, 10, 12, right? It doesn't mean that you don't necessarily, there's not a defensive purpose use for higher levels of magnification. That just means that the very nature of it is to be able to look at things that you don't necessarily need in an emergency to avoid a conflict immediately. Now, if you're navigating with a larger force, you want to avoid a force that's, a couple hundred yards away, that's totally a defensive use situation, right? Or you want to maybe, just keep an eye out on a threat or something. Having more magnification is always better, right? You can identify the weapon systems they're using now. You can identify maybe caliber by the way the magazine curves. You can identify barrel lengths, optic choices that the enemy is. You can figure out how well equipped they are to determine how much of a threat they are, right? Just something to keep in mind. Look at all these and compare them all, right? Yeah, this video is just meant to kind of show you the difference and to show you why you need magnification, and maybe the different use case scenarios for different levels of magnification, different types of optics. Think about your optic like a predator versus this is the way I like to look at it, a predator versus a prey type animal, right? Rabbits have their eyes on the sides of their heads. They have wider fields of view, right? Whereas predators tend to have more forward mounted, right? I mean, it's not always true in nature, but that's a great way to look at these optics, right? If you are doing more searching of a landscape, field of view matters a lot more, right? That doesn't mean that you're necessarily whatever, intending to harm something or intending to defend yourself against harm, right? A machine gunner might benefit more from less magnification, so that their reticle's not, jumping off as much target, jumping off as much, and they might benefit from more field of view. A sniper, if that's even still a thing, it's kind of irrelevant these days in a civilian use situation, it's going to benefit a lot more from being able to zoom very far in on a target from very far away, right? And they're not dealing with recoil as much. These are things to take into account. So yeah, but one thing's for sure, you need magnification on any rifle you have besides a home defense gun.